I have a list.
Yeah,
Giving a list.
Show
them later.
All right, everybody, we're going to get started here. Welcome. If you just, I can't see the door. All right, nobody's coming in. We have the room. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Sorry, I'm going to turn on the music. Take that, right? Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Prospect Leopard's Gardens, Greenlight Bookstore. My name is Jean and I'm the events coordinator here at Greenlight. We're super thrilled to be hosting tonight's event with Alejandro Varela, presenting his new book, The Town of Babylon. Very exciting. He will be talking with Rumaan Alam, so you're in for an excellent evening tonight. Before I turn things over to them, just a few housekeeping reminders. Please keep on your masks for the entirety of your time in the store this evening. And if you haven't already, please silence or turn off your cell phone. We are also recording this event, so if it turns out well, it'll be up on our YouTube channel in perpetuity. And most importantly, don't forget to buy the book if you haven't already. If you purchased a book bundle with your ticket, thank you so much. I hope you already picked up your book at the front. If not, Alejandro is signing all the copies we have, and if you ask very nicely, afterwards he might personalize it for you.
I will.
He will. Confirmed. So make sure to buy your copy. Your purchase of the book tonight helps us, makes it possible for us to keep putting on free author events like this one, so we really appreciate your support. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers tonight. Our interviewer for this evening is Rumaan Alam. Rumaan is the author of 3 novels, Rich and Pretty, That Kind of Mother, and Leave the World Behind. Other writing has appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Review of Books, Book Forum, The New York Times, New York Magazine, and The New Republic. Lots of newness. He studied writing at Oberlin College, and he now lives in New York with his family. He will be speaking with our featured author, Alejandro Varela. Alejandro is a writer based in New York. His work has appeared in The Point Magazine, Boston Review, Harper's Magazine, The Rumpus, Joyland, the Brooklyn Rail, The Offing, Blunderbuss Magazine, Pariahs, the Southampton Review, and The New Republic. He is also a 2019 Jerome Fellow in Literature, and his graduate studies were in public health. His new book, The Town of Babylon, was named the most anticipated book of 2022 by Buzzfeed, LitHub, Electric Literature, LGBTQ Reads, and Latinx Publishing. Much anticipated, and was praised by author Robert Jones Jr. as haunting, sublime, solemn, and true. Captivating and poignant, a modern coming-of-age story of the essential nature of community. The Town of Babylon is a novel about young love and a close examination of our social systems and the toll they take when they fail us. So you're in for something very special. Alejandro will be reading, and then Rumaan will join him in conversation, and then you all will have the chance to ask questions at the end of the night. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Alejandro and Rumaan.
I like your caveat that if it goes well.
I know, I was wondering, what is not
online? What if it goes well?
So you're under the gun.
Let's hope it goes well.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Wait, is this on?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't hear it.
Dave can hear it.
Okay, that's
fine.
I'm going to read a little bit from the book first, and Naomi, my friend, is going to join me. Yeah. So because I'm starting about a third of the way in, I'm going to set the stage a little bit. And if you'll do me the favor, if you feel comfortable, could you close your eyes for a moment? So I can run away. No, I'm kidding. The protagonist, Andrés, is home to take care of his dad, who is recovering from surgery. Last night, on a whim, he attended his high school reunion after 20 years of not seeing anyone. Jeremy, an old friend, he insisted on selling him weed. Andrés acquiesced, and now he's gone to visit him. Okay. You can open your eyes if you want to. Jeremy lives on a block of 2-story homes with small lawns, vinyl fences, driveways, and sickly maple trees, not far from St. Pete's, the elementary school. 1 block over is a street where a van full of teenagers opened fire on us with eggs and super soaker guns full of piss one Halloween. Our small group was unprepared for the onslaught of yellow. Mikey C., Paul, and I dove behind a hedgerow and only caught a bit of splatter on our costumes. Mike and I were Ghostbusters. Paul was Duff McKagan, the bassist for Guns N' Roses. But the rest of the pack had to run home to wash off the liquid detritus. I didn't recognize the assailants. All said they attended McKinley, the middle school named after the US president who'd been shot by an anarchist. Public school kids were, back then, mythical creatures that I'd hear about in passing and sometimes meet at a block party or parking lot carnival. They were usually the poorer or less devout cousins and neighbors of my Catholic school classmates, troublemakers who peed into water guns. Most of the houses in that part of town have clapboard siding, and they're painted off-white with red trim, dull blue with white trim, or beige with brown trim. There are no curbs or sidewalks in sight. Lawns end abruptly where the street's pavement begins. Small children bike loops or dribble basketballs on their driveways. Every few houses, flowers droop in their beds beneath bay windows. Occasionally there's an American flag. Always there's one house that's in disrepair. That's where the kids with the ratty uniforms and slovenly parents tend to live. Nowadays there are 2 of those houses per block. I've also noticed another trend: bigger, more ostentatious homes, mini McMansions, stuffed betwixt the older constructions. Whether this reflects wealth or non-union labor or materials made elsewhere for less, I don't know. Jeremy's lawn is small, but what it lacks in size it makes up for in verdancy. Water guns, a pedalless tricycle, and wiffle balls and bats are strewn about the recently mowed swath of green. A sprinkler oscillates 180 degrees, one side straight up, then the other. I park in front of his house on the street, behind an angled black Nissan Altima. 3 of its tires are on the pavement. The 4th rests on the short cobblestone perimeter that encircles the lawn. I can't see what lies beyond the white fence that encloses the side and back of the 2-story house. It comes up above my forehead, and there is no visible space between the pickets. I imagine a small patio and an unkempt yard peppered with dog shit. My mouth is dry. My mouth is dry. It feels small and inutile. I shouldn't have taken a hit of the old pot, a dime bag that my sister-in-law, Ellie, slid into my stocking during our first Christmas together after Henry died, nearly 9 years ago. I've wedged it between 2 books, The Count of Monte Cristo and Summer of My German Soldier, in our old bedroom. The brittle, grayish herb retains some of its potency and most of its secondary effects. I'm hungry in addition to cottonmouth. Before I knock, I prepare myself for the possibility of meeting Jeremy's wife. I wonder if she knows that her husband and I spent the last year of high school having sex in his parents' basement, and occasionally in my bedroom. Does she know that we loved each other? If they've been together for 10 years, it stands to reason that she's asked him about his adolescence, his first time, his first love. These are things that married people know about one another. I know them about Marco, my husband. His first time was with a college friend, who's now a well-known theater actor. They remain friends. I'm uncomfortable with it. And he knows them about me. But maybe Jeremy hasn't told his wife. He isn't a particularly loquacious or forthcoming person, or at least he wasn't. An onion with endless skins is what I remember. And maybe she suspects and doesn't want to risk the tears. Jeremy was always attracted to women and men. I pretended to be, but he actually was. His bi or pansexuality made me uneasy, primarily because I wanted both of us to feel the same way about everything. But he had a way of making me feel like the center. It didn't matter if we were with friends or in class or at the prom. I knew that his eyes were trained on me, following me around the room, ready to wink in my direction. He was, at least in that way, the abiding star. In retrospect, it's unbelievable that our carelessness didn't betray us more often. I recall one time, he kissed me in an empty hallway, in the moment after the warning bell rang and our classrooms were sealed shut. As Jeremy ran away down the long blue corridor, I spotted Miss Van Estrin standing in the frame of her door, her face ruddy, nearly apoplectic. She said nothing to me about it, but then misgraded my physics exam a few days later. She claimed to have miscalculated, but I convinced myself I was being sanctioned. Frankly, I didn't care. I was infected. Jeremy's confidence was my first sexually transmitted illness. He made me in a way carefree. His affections and attentions transformed me into another person. I was popular, but he was cool. A cool kid with good looks and rough edges who'd been in fights and played baseball, whose reputation cloaked our sins. If our ships sank, at least they would sink together. In the meantime, I spent senior year with outsized self-belief, feeling more attractive, funnier, taller even. One of the best-looking people I'd ever clapped eyes on cared as much about me as I did about him. For adolescent me, that was enough. Also unique was that Jeremy seemed assured about his feelings for me.
I love you.
He said as we were lying on his bed one Friday night in January senior year. Both of us were in boxers, staring up at a 1986 Mets poster on his ceiling. He said the words without turning to face me. I remained quiet for at least 10 seconds, focusing instead on Mookie Wilson's name, forcing myself to wonder about its origins, buying time, trying desperately to control how quickly and loudly I might respond. But the ball of fire that had traveled up from my stomach was detained only briefly in my throat. I love you too.
Yeah.
He said, as if he were confirming what he'd already known. The 4:30 Northern Hemisphere sun strikes a wide angle in the summer, warming my neck and calves, and lighting the modest house. I count 3 small beige sparrows with mustard beaks perched along the roof's gutter. I knock once for each bird, instead of ringing the cracked buzzer. It crosses my mind to run back to my car. What, after all, will we talk about? I compiled a list of questions on the way over here, most of them silly, icebreakers really. Through the living room window I see a shapeless figure move between shadows before I hear its footsteps. Jeremy appears behind the mesh of his screen door.
Hey.
Hey. His hair is darker and neater than it was last night. His pale face has a reddish tinge, as if he's just showered with hot water. He's wearing jeans pulled up high on his waist, and an unappealing lilac-colored polo shirt. He looks like a dad and a neighbor. He opens the screen door and steps forward, in the process allowing the sunlight to restore his humanity.
Give me a sec.
Jeremy inspects his mailbox and dislodges from it a few envelopes that have been forced into an opening that's too small.
Come in.
Should I take off my shoes?
What? Why?
I don't know, germs?
It's fine, whatever you want.
Jeremy bisects a narrow, rectangular living room and enters an equally circumscribed kitchen.
Something to drink? I got water, milk, orange juice, or pink wine.
He calls out, with his head inside of the refrigerator. Pink wine. Who doesn't know rosé? I suspect he's uncomfortable saying the word, as if it'll emasculate him. I thought you didn't drink.
I don't. The wine is Tanya's.
It stands to reason that Tanya is his wife, but I don't ask for confirmation. Water's fine.
Ice?
Yes, please. He hands me a glass dripping with condensation and sits on a teal sofa across from the armchair I've already claimed. The blues and purples of his clothing and furniture are disorienting, as if his white arms and white face are floating, disembodied.
Do you want...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, nothing. I was just wondering where your family is.
Oh. Tanya took the kids to the pool at the high school.
Garfield? Another assassinated president.
Yeah, they have swim classes every day in the summer.
How old are they?
4 to 7. Lincoln is 4.
Like the presidents or the cars?
What? Oh, Tanya named them both.
He says with a restrained smile. Maybe I've embarrassed him with my penchant for trivia. Will they be home soon?
Class just started, and she usually takes them to Athena's after.
They remodeled, I say. I noticed on the way over here.
Yeah, but it's still the same old diner. Same menu.
I remember the french fries.
Still great.
We both smile until it becomes awkward. I look down at the ring of water on my shorts. I wipe the glass with the end of my shirt.
It's hotter up here. Let's go down to the basement.
He says. My childhood home didn't have a basement. The land here wasn't made for basements, my dad has claimed. But for a few $100s more, we could have had a garage. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. My mother, however, is grateful for the simplicity. Who would have cleaned the garage? They get moldy and fill up with junk. I've never seen a clean garage. I think it's a garbage, but they forgot to add the B.
There are 5 empty seats up here if somebody who's standing in the back wants to come sit down. It's very lonely when there are 5 seats.
5?
First
Yeah,
5. Thank you.
Come on down, Danny.
No, it really didn't.
Thank you.
Perfect. No, it's helpful. So, I have to take my glasses off. So
Please do.
I'm old. It's
I'm not used to seeing you with clothes
I
on.
know, yeah. That's true. We actually know.
Rumaan is my beach
We
friend.
usually hang out with bathing suits.
Yeah.
The question I usually ask people, like the first question I usually ask people is to, actually this is like a variation on what I usually do, but can you provide a plot summary for the town of Babylon that is under 1 minute?
Plot summary under a minute.
Just a plot summary.
Yes. So
Alright, go.
Andrés lives in the city, returns home to the suburbs where he grew up to take care of a sick father. And after a couple of days of being there, he decides to attend his high school reunion. It's been 20 years. The flyer's sitting there on the bed. He's kind of been pushed along to do it by his parents. And he goes. And he reconnects in the process with several people from his life. His first love, Jeremy, who he just met. His best friend, who isn't there, but is in a psychiatric hospital. And Paul, who was sort of a frenemy, who is now a Baptist minister and may or may not have killed someone 20 years ago. And
Okay, it's definitely been a minute. That's definitely.
okay, well, I think I got it all.
So,
So it's
but I
fine.
think you
Yeah.
did it all.
And it's funny. That's not part of the plot.
And that's not part of the plot, though.
Right.
That's a separate concern. But I was wondering, so as you described, like the book takes, like you have the kind of device of a person who's gone home and it's animated by the high school reunion. And so my question was for you, whether you had, like how you conceived of the book. Did you conceive of it as being about this compressed period of time, this high school reunion that allowed you to travel across the decades, or did you conceive of it as like a desire to write about the place and you needed a way, you needed a mechanism
Right.
to let you write about the place?
Okay, so for the 3 people in this room who don't know this, my background is in public health.
That's you're getting to the next question.
Oh, okay, okay.
Still-
I can see. It's very much.
Fucking
I'm sorry. It's very much related to public health. I thought of the individuals first. I thought of a bunch of folks who are kind of isolated within the area that they live. So folks without community who live in a shared space. And then I guess I wanted to show that without ties to the community, they were worse off for it. But the town was too. So yeah, so I started with that, and then I filled in the rest.
Okay, so you began with the people.
I began with the people.
So the device of.
And I've never been to a high school reunion.
Okay, but that's yeah. This is my way of asking.
Okay. I've never been to a high school
Right?
reunion.
Like this is what every debut novelist has to talk about at
Yes.
some point.
Yes.
Is like the tension between the person we're meeting on the page and the person who's sitting on the stage, like, and how much you are consciously playing with that.
Right. Yeah, I played with it a fair bit. But yeah, I had never been to a high school reunion, and I think when I sat down to write this, I thought, I want to write, you'll find this hard to believe, but far away from my experience. I want to really imagine something that I haven't experienced, so that I could point to it and be like, see, it's fiction. And so I thought, what would it be like to see all of the people I haven't seen in 20 years? So that part I have in common with him. So then I just imagined going back. I imagined my father being sick. I imagined all of these things helped me to get there. Yeah.
I mean, I understand, but I feel like this is like a gray area for people who don't write fiction.
Right.
Like this tension, and that's why.
Right. Well, I think this sort of comes up. Yesterday I had an interview with someone who said, how autobiographical is this? Which is like my least favorite question. And I think in part because I feel like if there were more of us writing books, which is to say non-white cishet men writing books, people would focus more on the things I was writing about and not necessarily always thinking about how much of this is you, how much of this is you, how much of this is you. As an example, I would say that they might wonder, did that thing ever happen to you? But is this autobiographical? I mean, John Updike, right, would go on vacation, would write a short story, he would leave for a weekend and then come back and hand in a short story to the New Yorker that was about a man who went on vacation for a weekend. And so I think because there were enough sort of, folks weren't really interested in ethnography of John Updike. They were interested in what he was writing about and what happened. And so I think some folks are just kind of like, wow, class jumping, queer, Latinx. I say Latinx and not Latinx. We can talk about that later. You know, public health worker. I've never heard this voice before. I haven't seen enough of this. So then it really becomes about my personal experience and how much of it is me. Now, to the folks who know me, they'll recognize themselves. I had the conversation. I finished the manuscript and put the last page down, and I immediately called my mom and dad. Both of them, they were on the speakerphone, and I said, so I wrote something, and it's not about you, but you're going to see yourself in this for sure. And I just wanted to, and my mom just said, stop right there. You don't have to ask us for permission for anything. This, you live it too, whatever you want to borrow, whatever is useful to you, just take it.
Were you asking permission, or were you just preparing it?
I said, I'm sending you the manuscript. And she said, I'll read it, but I don't care what I read. I'm not going to say no.
Have you read that?
Yeah. But she didn't at first read it to the end. I just kept saying, just read it to the end before you make that. Just read it all the way to the end. And she kept making that declaration every time we talked. She's like, I'm almost there, I'm halfway. But then when the book was published, she read it to my dad. Every night she would read him a chapter. And in the and in the morning, can you believe my dad's just like, I just don't read fiction. He reads the paper, all the papers, every morning, in English, but he will not read fiction. It's just like, it's just not me, my brain isn't like that. Yeah, so my mom read it to him, and every morning they would wake up and call me and say, we laughed so hard last night. We laughed so hard, oh my God. They're like, Mom, but that never happened. I want you to know I didn't have a secret boyfriend. She's like, I know, but we see ourselves. And we see so-and-so, and we saw so-and-so.
Do you, I mean, I think you're right that is like a question. I mean, I'm perpetuating it by asking you that question, but I do think it is a question that brown people are asked, and I wonder whether does that feel burdensome to you? Do you feel like you can't write? I don't know, what do you do with
I
that?
think I spent a lot of time, even just the choice to write in first person, which I think is like 75% of my work, because I'm so interested in internal conflict, in like your actual, what is going through your mind, how you can stand to live in this world and enjoy it, knowing what the real world is. And so that to me is what's fascinating, and that would be really hard for me to do in third person. So even first person is just easier, but then yeah, I went through all like the imposter syndrome stuff, not having an MFA, coming from public health, and on top of that, essentially, like, you're writing by yourself, right? I was like, no, I'm not, I swear. But that kind of feeling, yeah, it weighs on me. So then when the questions are like, how much of this is you, then I think, oh, do you think it's just like a veiled autobiography?
I mean, it does imply that you were really hot in high school.
Yeah.
And your children,
But it's fiction because the book suggests like a burst bottom, but in real life I'm a burst top. So. Welcome to Greenlight.
I meant to say at the top that I'm going to leave time for audience questions. So you guys think of questions that you have for Alejandro. You keep talking about public health, even though I told you not to talk about public health. But I asked you about it. I wonder if you could expound upon your work in public health and your relationship between that training and what this book undertakes.
So prior to writing, I was teaching policy advocacy at LIU in the grad program, public health students, and a few other things as an adjunct does. Like the day before school started, they're like, can you teach diabetes to nurses? Yes.
Teach diabetes?
Like diabetes 101 to nurses. How to give diabetes. Yeah, diabetes to nurses and public health and film. And so I was teaching that, and then prior to that, I was writing health curriculum for ministries of health, where HIV and AIDS was at epidemic levels, so mostly sub-Saharan Africa, but what I like to call soft imperialism. It was mostly, sort of government worker trainings. And prior to that, I was doing cancer research at Mount Sinai. Get your colonoscopies, everyone. They said 50, but now it's 45. I think if you lead a stressful life, you should be going at 35 to 40. Make up an excuse so it's covered. Anyway, sorry, PSA. And but the things that fascinated me most in public health were just sort of the effects of hierarchy on health and how inequality within a society was a greater predictor of poor overall health than was whether you smoked a cigarette or whether you ate too much or whether you were overweight. And I wanted to communicate that. And I was teaching in that class, our students in the advocacy class, how to write op-eds. So that every semester they would write an op-eds on the topics that we were discussing. And 4 or 5 or 6 would get published every semester. I thought it was great. And at some point I thought, wow, I've never written an op-ed. I should probably write one. So I started writing and a couple got published. And then I was thinking about how, wow, there are op-eds every single day in every single publication. And does anyone retain any of this? And what are the messages and what are the ways in which I have learned? And a lot of that was through narrative, stories. So I was like, ooh, maybe I'll invent a genre, public health fiction. And no one liked that idea. So I just called it fiction. But yeah, how do I incorporate these things? And the town of Babylon, wait, is that a question you're going to ask in a minute? So I should
No, yeah, keep going. 'Cause,
Okay,
like, so you explain, like, that's your resume. This is not genre review.
Yeah.
My question is about, like, how does this project relate to that training? That, like, how does this project realize
So
what you just talked about?
Public health is essentially, the way it's taught is about health behavior change. So how do you get people to change their behaviors? It's never about how you get them to change systems. It's about how do you get them to change behavior. I mean, radical public health work does, but by and large, the focus is like, oh, we need to get you to quit smoking. We need you to stop eating fatty foods. It's rarely about how do we talk about reparations and land back and all the things that would really open the floodgates so people could kind of have the dignity and the room to breathe and arrive at these conclusions on their own. Oh man, I did it again. Just like proselytizing, and I forgot what is the question?
But yes.
Very compelling.
Yeah,
But
right.
in what way?
Right, so
this
empathy.
novel,
Right, empathy.
like
Right, so then I wanted to write about that town. I wanted to write about that idea of a global community that is healthier when they have each other. And the best way to do that is to collapse a hierarchy. You can't, it's a myth, it's Hollywood that like, we're all gonna be united, but you're gonna be up there and I'm gonna be here. It's really hard to hold hands if someone is all the way up there. And so I wanted to write about a town where they were all healthy until they stopped trusting each other, until economic policies influenced how they related to each other. And I wanted to, I think of Toni Morrison, for example, as a public health writer, because she gives so much history and pays so much attention to the experiences that led to the choices, right? Public health is about your choices, but that's not enough if you don't consider what led to those choices. And so this book was really about like, how do we, every character, even I think the ones that you might find the most disagreeable or detestable, they have a history and we at some point get to that history and we understand what their motivations were. And so that's kind of the story and that's how I wanted to tell that story.
That's an interesting answer, especially I was looking at the book because I read this so long ago, and I was reading it again this afternoon to remember, and I was remembering what's the name of the guy who was the church? Paul, and the way in which it's like he could. No, I'm just rambling, but anyway, someone who could just be a bad guy,
Yeah.
or sort of like the mechanism for bad in a narrative.
Yeah.
You understand enough about who he is
Right.
that you see him as more complex.
Right, and that to me is very much a part of public health. It's really just trying to understand what you do. You tailor interventions to try and like reach folks where they're at. And in the process of writing it, I read 3 books, one of which was The Bluest Eye. I hadn't read it before, and I was like, oh, I can't remember the names of all the characters right now, but there's one in particular that we follow who is, the average reader that might be like, oh, that person's a monster, they're irredeemable, and then we jump to his history, and then you're like, oh, okay, no, we're monsters, we're all monsters, we made him who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard the language of public health applied to fiction, I don't think.
So you're saying it could be a genre?
Well, maybe it is. I mean, maybe you're just insisting that it is. Well done. You did invent a genre. So I saw you on this panel at the LA Times What is it called? The LA Times Book
LA Times Festival of Books,
The
yeah.
LA Times Festival of Books. Okay.
Wasn't I so good there?
What was the name? What was the name of that? Do you remember what the name of the panel was?
Queer identity in fiction.
Right. Okay. It's like a classic.
Very, yeah.
Classic. I'm happy. And so then I was thinking about it that afternoon, and then today again. Like, is this a queer novel? And if the answer is yes, why is that the answer?
Okay, so yes, because, and I'm going to get into trouble here because I've never taken a queer or women's studies class, and yet I like to pretend I know what queer is and what the distinction is, and specifically the distinction between queer and gay. And to me, queer is, personally, it's like gay plus an analysis of what's happening and how all the systems sort of interlock to oppress us, like how homophobia and transphobia and misogyny and racism and all of it are related, and questioning all of those things. And gay has just really just become about two folks having sex, right? And so, and that's no
Two.
Actually, maybe. And so.
So queer is.
Queer is I feel like there's a politics. There's a politics to it, sure, but like a liberatory politics, kind of a questioning of the system. That's a questioning in Q and Q. That's what I think of. Yeah.
So it's not a queer novel by virtue of authorial identity or by virtue of like plot mechanism, but in terms of its politics, in terms of its interrogation.
Yeah, but I can't really disentangle those from each other. So I'm gonna have to give that one some more thought for the next.
You don't really have to give me an answer. I'm just curious.
Oh yeah.
Because you were on this panel, and I'm always curious because.
And I was worried.
You know.
Remember we talked about this. I was worried. It was like 3 cis dudes, and it was called Queer Identity in Fiction. And I didn't know them, and I didn't know their work. And I always try to read everyone's work when I sit down, before I sit down with them, so I have an idea. And I didn't. So I was like walking in thinking, I don't see anything here that immediately jumps out as queer to me as I think of it. I feel like this is just a nowadays queer and gay are being used interchangeably. But again, I don't want to get in trouble because there's like a whole study of this, and I'm just kind of waxing on my own observations. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, so if it is, so it seems plain that there was like a political project. I was going to say agenda, but that makes me sound like a crazy right-winger. But you understand my question. Like, if there's a political dimension to your authorial project, like how do you judge the work as you're working? Is it on, am I getting the ideas across, or is it on, are the people believable, or is it on the level of like, is this sentence good?
Yeah. I mean, when I figure that out, no, that is the question. I write, that's for the last 8 or 10 years, or since I started writing, in this way, it's like I'm sitting down to write. I still, in public health circles, say, they're like, what are you working on? And I'm like, a book. Like, I'm a public health worker whose medium is fiction. That's what I like to think of. So there's an urgency to everything I'm doing. I really feel like there's an urgency. Like, average life expectancy used to be 81, it's now closer to 79. Most of that is opioid epidemic stuff, some of it is COVID. But we are kind of one of the few industrialized nations that are dropping. And a lot of that is the inequality as it grows. And so I feel like there are all these things I want to see in my lifetime. And so when I'm writing, I'm like, how do I advocate for these things and entertain people at the same time? And I spent maybe more, but the whole time I'm thinking, gosh, I would hate a really bad review in the New York Times. Actually, I just love a review in the New York Times. So if there's someone in here, I would hate a really bad review in the New York Times, but I would really feel like garbage if someone in one of my communities came to me and said, you recreated, you did the same thing people have been doing all along, you upheld in some way a system or an oppression that we've been trying to tear down. That would be much worse to me than Dwight Garner not liking my book.
That's interesting.
But yeah, so I'm thinking that the whole time that I'm writing, and especially if I'm writing outside of my own experience or my own voice, there's that whole other level. Am I being respectful? Am I is there dignity here? And that's for me more a question of craft, because I believe in myself as a human, that I see dignity in all of the folks that I'm writing and the experiences, but am I communicating that? Is that coming across? Am I going on too long? And I do go on too long. I genuinely feel like I wrote a narrator, they're two narrators, but I wrote, for sure, like a first-person narrator who's annoying. Like, I'm reading him and I think, that's a lot. That's a lot. But I also, like I said, I'm like, but I'm trying really hard to shoehorn as much of this as possible in, and how much can I get away with is really what I'm thinking when I'm writing. How much can I get away with, and is it still funny? And is it still touching? And in some cases, it's still thrilling. And, yeah, so, but I think that's gonna be like a lifelong thing.
I mean, it's funny that you've mentioned humor a couple of times, because I do think it's like, it's a funny book. And like, I don't know if the public health novel is the sexiest pitch in the world. Like, I don't know if people are gonna be like, oh, that sounds hilarious. But there is a lot of like, you know, it's like you described your parents like saying, oh, we laughed. I mean, they're your parents, so they have to say that. But like, you're conscious of a need to entertain.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I just want to be liked. And, no, but I'm joking, but there's truth in that too, right? Like, I really, when I'm writing, I'm like, how do I make everything I'm saying accessible and enjoyable at all times? Whether that has something to do with being the child of immigrants who's always interpreting situations and language. And so I'm like, is that clear? Can everyone understand this? Can the people I meet to understand this understand this?
I'm so glad you mentioned this, because actually I really wanted to ask you, you were raised in a household speaking Spanish, and I'm because I only speak one language, I'm really like fascinated by a brain that can hold more than one language. And I wonder if you think that experience, that upbringing, I wonder if you can say what effect that had on how you write English and how you write fiction. You kind of just said it, I think, like clarity.
For sure it's about clarity. From time to time there are ideas, I wish I could point to a few. There are ideas and words that only exist to me in Spanish, and feelings maybe even. And so then I spend a lot of time trying to communicate them. I also spend a lot of time worrying about how to insert Spanish. You know, it's been the norm, I think, in the industry that you italicize the other language. And I don't like doing that, because you can Google anything. And so I'm like, just figure it out. And also, I'm aware, and I try to give it context. That is one thing I do. I think, okay, if they can't figure it out, they'll go to Google if they care enough to like translate these 4 words, if they really desperately need to know. But I work pretty hard so that you don't even have to. Like, you could figure it out just from the next one, even if you have no working knowledge of the second or third language in the book, because I speak 3.
I mean, Henry James has all this like conversational French in those books,
Right.
and it's like, it's not like, you can't tell from context, they'll have a whole conversation in French, you're like, what the fuck are you saying? Like, I don't speak French.
Yeah. And then, but it's also hard because the scenes with parents, I think in an ideal world, they would have been 50% more bilingual. But at some point I thought, okay, I know who the primary audience is going to be here, and I have to give in. I can't just, right? I don't feel empowered, I guess. Maybe there'll be some point where I'll be like, no, just figure it out. But I did. I was aware. I thought, okay, 3, 4, 5, half a page in Spanish. Okay, maybe now I switch back to English. It helps that my parents, and it's particularly my own mother, does jump back and forth with English and Spanish. But I don't know if most readers know that that's pretty common with folks with immigrants and with folks who've been here a while, and you just sort of start speaking kind of a mixed, a broken, or a new Spanglish, right?
No.
And so, yeah, the rhythm of that was kind of, has been, in all my writing, an issue for me, something that I've been trying to find the perfect way to do it, or the right way to do it.
You just reminded me of English. Thank you for that. So I usually ask a bunch of rapid fire questions before I
Oh, like Actor Studio?
Yeah, what's that guy's name?
James.
That guy seems like bad news. Before I turn it over to the audience questions, was he dead?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak that with dead. Just a reminder to the audience that you can ask your questions when I'm done with this. Alejandro, do you write in the morning or at night?
Both.
Oh, that's a bad answer.
Okay. During the pandemic, all my writing was midnight to 3 a.m. And before the pandemic, it was 9 to 5.
Okay, that's a better answer. Do you write by hand or do you write on a
Computer.
Okay.
It's on what is it? It's a laptop, but it's Mac.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's just a Mac. They have like different names. Okay.
They have different names, I don't know about that stuff. Do you listen to music when you write?
Yes, and in fact, I created a list because the jumping back in the novel, it takes place between present day, 2017 and 1997. That's 20 years. And I created a playlist of about 150 songs, all between 94 and 98. And I listened to those 150 odd songs the entire time I was writing the novel. For 13 weeks without stop, I listened to the same songs over and over and over again because I wanted to get into the mindset of that. I was also feeling very nostalgic. And I'm embarrassed to say that songs that I kind of put on there in a jokey way, just to get through it, I learned to really like. And one song in particular, in fact, influenced one of the storylines. Yeah.
So, but what happens now when you hear those songs?
Yeah, I'm a little
Are
burnt
you like,
out.
oh, I can't listen to
Yeah,
that
I'm a
song?
little burnt out. Yeah. Next one's going to be a book that jumps back to the 80s.
When you are writing, can you also be reading?
Yes. And in fact, often I need to, because when I slow down or I start to doubt myself, sometimes it's as simple as just reaching over and grabbing any book and being like, oh, okay, that's a sentence. That's a paragraph. And sometimes it's more intentional, something I've been really meaning to read, and then I think, that's a good sentence, that's a good paragraph. And it just gives me the freedom to have fun, not to copy, and that's why I get a little nervous about that.
I didn't think you copied.
No.
Yes, you copied.
No. But like that, I have that fear, right? That you're
Yes.
gonna internalize something, and then suddenly I'm like, wait, that chapter is, it's like, it's Julio Alvarez. Everyone's gonna realize that's exactly what. No. So I'm trying to be careful with that, and I'll read several books at once. Yeah. So there's a thing I read only on the couch in the living room. There's a thing I only read at bed before I go to sleep. Yeah. And then when we were.
Yeah, you're carrying on a book in a Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you eat when you're writing? Don't say you don't.
Okay, I'll make something up then.
You don't snack when you're writing? I find that shocking.
No,
Okay,
I don't.
that's really shocking.
And if I'm the slightest bit anxious, I can't eat anything. For the last 6 weeks, I have subsisted on gluten-free energy bars. And only
That's
when
true. Actually, I think you ate 2 of them when we were at the hotel.
It's the only way, I have to remind myself to nourish that and like beta blockers.
So you don't snack.
I don't snack.
Do you drink when you're writing?
No, not when I'm writing. But every so often I'll drink just enough and I'll be like, oh, I gotta go sit down and write right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, this is what like Van Gogh.
So you-
Yes, I get it now. It's all coming out.
So you've got your buzz on and then
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
I'm gonna go get to work.
Yeah.
What is a book that you would recommend to every single person in this room?
The Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Orbeez. You must read. It should just be required reading for everyone. I love it so much. It's taught me a lot. And I'm eager to dive into that canon of history. And that book actually also, I found ways to tuck some of what I learned into the novel. But you probably wanted something like fiction, right?
It's your event. Just tell the truth. I'm still shocked by not smacking.
I think The Bluest Eye is my favorite Toni Morrison. I love it so much. And side note, it was that year that Pulitzer people were like, oh, there's no book worthy, there's no award given. I love it.
Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the machinations were behind like whether it was considered or not, but I love it. I read it and I thought, oh, this must have been when she won the Pulitzer. So then I looked it up, and there was no prize given that year. They just couldn't come to a decision or something. Or there was nothing worthy enough. Who's read The Bluest Eye?
That's,
Yeah, I know.
And a
I
crowd
know.
like this.
So, I mean, no, but that goes back to something I want to mention, which is that before I started writing fiction, I never read fiction. I think I could count on maybe 15 novels I read my entire life before I started writing. Everything was nonfiction. I felt like the world is going to end. I don't have time for the tree. I really want to know about like the history of everything. And then, and now I'm playing catch up. I read a lot. Not like you, but I read a lot. Yeah, I read very fast. It takes me a long time.
Well, I stand.
I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna try that this summer.
We left some time for questions from the audience, so I don't know how. I guess just shout them out. It's a very small room. Just shout. Oh, I thought she was asking if she was leaving. No one? Come on.
Like,
My rapid fire, but I'm out of rapid fire questions. So
it's been so clear.
What's the hardest character to write?
Good question.
The hardest character to write. Simone. So Simone is Andrés' best friend. She is currently in a psychiatric hospital dealing with kind of an acute moment of schizophrenia. And I was really nervous about writing about mental health and writing in a way that was respectful. I didn't want to make Simone's experience stereotypical or flat in any way, so I spent a lot of time thinking and asking questions and reading, and also, thinking about the mental health issues in my own life, in my family, in my friends, everything, and just trying to capture that so that she wasn't a trope in any way.
It was the mental health. How did you handle the imaginative leap into blackness or into femininity? Did that feel like a similar challenge, or did that feel like a different part of the challenge?
I mean, for sure, I'm always thinking about how any oppressed or marginalized sort of person appears in art. How is it perpetuating things? Is it investigating? Is it giving it, I don't want to say resolution, but just something hopeful. I'm really kind of caught up in this idea of more hopeful stories because I feel like they're always so, it just doesn't turn out well. Because it's not turning out well sometimes. So it's out there, but I do think there's joy and hope, and so trying to insert that into her character and her storyline was also very important to me. And someone said to me really, that I was in a class and one of the students said, it was really too bad that everything worked out for Paul and nothing worked out for Simone. And I thought, dang, did I miss that? I felt the opposite, actually. I felt that there was hope for Simone, and she was maybe the most hopeful of all of the characters. And that Paul, to me, he got away with something, but he's in his own prison, his own mind. And
So we know you didn't go to a high school reunion, but can you tell us about a very noteworthy or unusual or specific kind of research you did, like going somewhere or doing something, or just something you read about while you were writing the novel?
Well, while I was writing it, in the middle of it, I took a month off just to read. So I didn't allow myself to write anything, and I read, a lot of books. And the three that stood out the most were The Bluest Eye, In the Time of Butterflies, Orbeez, and The Dispossessed, Ursula Le Guin. And they influenced the book a lot. Not the form, the use of two narrators, the dueling narrator, all of that was in there. But the part about the reunions and the imagining that experience. I mean, maybe the last 40 years of pop culture found its way into that. There's a lot of that in film and television. But I'd like to say it's the one place where I was just like, I'm just going to imagine here. I'm really going to imagine and take composites of lots of people. You know, I had a lot of fun with Jeremy. Had a lot of fun with all of the characters. And before I started writing this novel, I was not a person who said, oh, I love my characters. And I would hear that, writers say that. I really love this person. I really feel a connection to my characters. And I never did. I would enjoy writing them, and I had certain standards that I wanted all the characters to have, but I didn't feel emotionally connected in the way that I did by the end of this book with, in particular, you know, well, several of them, but Henry, the mother, Rosario, Simone. Yeah, those three characters to me stayed with me for a long time. I still think about them, and I get a little like, gosh, I hope they're okay. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you started writing fiction and just identifying as a writer?
Yeah, so for those who didn't hear, talk a little bit about how I started writing fiction and identified as a writer. I think a few people in the room know that I feel like it was 3 months ago that I started saying I'm a writer. I was just like, I don't really believe it. This feels kind of like I'm playing, and I like to show up very prepared everywhere I am. And because of what I said before, that my background was in public health, and I didn't have a long history of reading fiction, I feel processing this imposter stuff, you know, where I'm like, I'm gonna show up, sit next to someone who's read absolutely everything, is gonna refer to it, is gonna start using words like scaffolding. What is scaffolding? I have no idea. There are all these like buzzwords that everyone knows, and I feel a little out of my element, and also kind of worried about being disrespectful to a tradition and to an area of research and work and art. So it's taken me a long time. I think now, and for a little bit now, like, yeah, I'm a writer. I'm a public health writer.
That actually brings up my question, which is, as somebody who is a radical community activist, queer, anti-capitalist, who has a project or agenda or whatever you call it, I feel like a lot of the time, I want you to talk about navigating the industry. Like, a lot of the time I feel like whenever our people, or our kind, as you say, have a film or a book and we focus on the story and the power of that, but we almost allow the machinations of the industry to remain invisible. And so, like, how are you, and the contradictions and the compromises of whatever sphere we choose to try to reach people and get these messages out. So I'm interested in hearing how you navigate that, and, you know, because as somebody who does believe so much in cultural resistance as so crucial for liberation movements, but like, you're dealing with an industry and there's stuff around marketing and how much agency you do or don't have. So like, spill the tea.
Yeah. Gosh, I did a podcast interview yesterday where at the beginning of it, the interviewer said, "Don't. I will cut out your and ums later. Don't worry, it'll be okay." And I was like, I don't do that. I'm hearing myself saying, Anyway, first and foremost, I work with Danny Vasquez over here, who is my editor at Astra House, and Rachel Small, who's the publicist at Astra House, and I feel very fortunate to work with rad folks within the industry. Politically, I aligned with them. I mean, we haven't fully kikied on everything, but yeah, I didn't even want to search around too much. When Danny was interested and I knew where he stood politically on a lot of things, I thought I need to work with this person because I want someone who is going to read a draft and say, no, don't say that, don't do that, explore here, go further. And so I felt very fortunate, and I feel fortunate to have Danny there always to remind me, and will say to me, this is a white supremacist industry, just like many others. You're not always going to understand why it doesn't work out. Sometimes you'll know and they won't say it. Sometimes you're going to feel it. There's a lot of stuff out there. And yeah, I feel kind of weird because I do consider myself an anti-capitalist within this system. And I have spent the last 6 months trying to sell a book, trying to get people to spend money. But you know what? Like, whatever. That's in a whole other conversation. So yeah, just thinking about, do I want to really push my book on this platform or this place or that place? No, I don't. But they sell a lot of books, you know, and I'm trying to get the message out there. And there's a story here that I really want to share with people, and so I'm just going to use this horrible platform and this. I'm monitoring it at all times, trying really hard not to fall too hard into all of it, but then also trying to put this book in people's hands. And I really want to take out the sell part and admit, like, I'm quite bougie. I live a really comfortable life. I'm not a struggling writer. I had a career before this. I married well. That's backdoors. That's capitalism's backdoor no one talks about, right? Yeah. And so I don't worry day to day about survival like a lot of other writers do. And so I think I have a bit of room to be like, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm also not in a position where I'm swatting things away yet. But I hope I will be able to swat things away that I don't respect or that I think contribute to the things that I want to see gone. Does that answer the question? Ish?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, no one can have the one answer.
No.
I also just really want to name that I love your verse top struggling having interview top. And you did fabulously. Interview topping.
Okay, thanks. To write that down.
Anyone else? Well, we're out of time anyway, but it was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Rumaan.
This is the book, The Town of Babylon. Everybody needs to buy it.
Thank you all for coming. Check out our calendar online. We have a lot of great author events coming up in May and June. And please buy the book. Alejandro will sign it. And you're welcome to hang out, browse. Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thank you. And if you already own the book, happy to sign it. If you already own the book, buy another. Give it away. Let's sell them out today.
Message out there.
Let's sell them out today. I'll be back.